First and foremost, we need to bring up Composite Superman. This was an everyday man who gained the ability to shapeshift and look exactly like Superman and Batman. Joseph Meach was actually a diver who had organized an elaborate stunt to jump off a high building into a large tank of water. What he didn't realize, however, was that the tank was leaking and only an inch of water remained. Superman managed to intervene and saved him from hitting the tank, and he even gave him a job as a custodian at the Superman Museum. Now, this seemed like a pretty noble gesture from the Man of Steel, but Meach only grew bitter having to stare at all of Superman's achievements every single day. But one night when he was wiping down a case of Legionnaire miniatures, a bolt of lightning traveled through an open window and struck Meach and the statues, granting the diver all the powers of every member of the Justice League. He decided to create a costume that was half Superman and half Batman and aimed to take down the superheroes. As it turns out though, Meach's powers were only temporary and he was unable to accomplish his final goal. Now here's what Superman would have looked like if his ship had crashed in the Soviet Union. As we know, Superman happened to land in the United States and spent a large chunk of his time in America, but Red Sun looks at how the superhero would have turned out in the era of communist Russia. The Soviets unveiled Red Sun Superman to the world in 1953, and this obviously sent the US into a bit of a panic. This forced them to shift their focus from nuclear weapons to metahumans at the peak of the Cold War. The three-part miniseries details how this Superman was immortal, but that he was actually a direct descendant of Lex Luthor and Lois Lane. To make matters even more interesting, Red Sun Superman is also from Earth's distant future, which adds a whole new level of complexity to this alternate hero. And although Red Sun looks nearly identical to the standard Superman, you will obviously notice that he has the communist hammer and sickle on his chest instead of the trademark Superman logo. There was even a younger version of Red Sun who resided on Earth 30 and was recruited by Monarch to fight his war against the Monitors. Next on our list is Superdoom. Now with a name like that, you should already be able to tell this alternate version of Superman was not a good one. Superdoom came to fruition thanks to a machine that was created by Jimmy Olsen, which turned thoughts into reality. This led to the creation of a robot Superman, which was sold to Overcorp, who later turned it into Superdoom. Now you would think that a robot version of this great hero could be used to stop all sorts of crimes, but that is not what Overcorp wanted to do. Instead, they decided to take over Earth 45, but they also wanted to go one step further and enter the bleed space. Superdoom was essentially sent on a mission to find the creators of the multiverse as it destroyed planets and other versions of Superman in the process. It seemed like this monstrous creation could not be stopped, but that was until it reached Earth 23's Superman. This Superman, along with Lex Luthor, thankfully managed to strand it between universes and put a stop to Superdoom's mad rampage. Up next is Superman's exact opposite, otherwise known as Bizarro Superman. This strange iteration of Superman would say things like "me will hurt you" instead of "I will save you." Aside from doing things very differently from your traditional Superman, Bizarro also has a very strange looking appearance. He has chalk white skin and messy hair and just doesn't seem as well put together as someone like Clark Kent. Bizarro has also worn a few different costumes over the years, but his most memorable one included a reverse S symbol, a clear indication of his opposite personality. While many people view this as just a funny anti-hero to Superman, others believed it was a bit of political propaganda from DC. Since Superman was also so popular in the United States during the Cold War, many believe that DC had actually created Bizarro to represent the conflicting opinions of the Soviet Union. After that, we have the Justice Lord. This is a very dark side of Superman that the world really shouldn't see. This one was presented as an alternate timeline in a 2003 episode of the Justice League that was ironically titled A Better World. In this episode, Kal-El and the rest of the Justice Lords stormed the White House after Lex Luthor had just eliminated the Flash. It was quite obvious why the Lords were not too happy with President Luthor, but this Superman did not handle things in traditional Superman fashion. As Wonder Woman and Batman were busy fighting off the Secret Service, Lex Luthor is threatening Superman with a big button that can single-handedly start a nuclear war. Well, Superman decides to take things to the next level, and as his eyes glow red, Lex Luthor was brought down to a pile of dust. Batman and Wonder Woman come rushing into the Oval Office to investigate, but it was clear that they were far too late. This allowed a very dark side of Superman and the rest of the Justice Lords to take control of the Earth. Next on our list is Ultraman. This one is sort of like Bizarro Superman in a sense, but far more powerful and much more dangerous. Ultraman is a very evil version of Superman who is hell-bent on destruction. Aside from being a criminal and an outright maniac, the other thing that makes Ultraman Superman's real opposite is his love of kryptonite. Ultraman Ultraman actually thrives off of the substance that Superman cannot stand, and this only adds to his growing powers. Ultraman will also gain even more power the angrier he gets, which makes him one truly terrifying anti-hero. Ultraman's Justice League is also just a rowdy crime syndicate that has no desire to help anyone but themselves. It appropriately features a U-shaped logo instead of an S, and they are exactly what the citizens of Earth 3 do not need. There have been a lot of interesting takes on opposite heroes over the years, but this crystal-eating maniac is just downright terrifying. Up next is Gold Superman. Yes, this sounds like an ultra version of a character in a video game, but Gold Superman is very real. This Superman resides on Earth 44, where he is actually a member of the superhero group known as the Metal Men. These are robotic versions of all your favorite Justice League heroes, including Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Arrow, and many more. But with all of the tech involved with these robotic superheroes, you just knew that there was always a disaster waiting to happen. Back in Final Crisis 7, the Metal Men's base of operations separated from Earth 44 and collided with New Earth. But instead of sustaining just some minor injuries, the magnetic fields on New Earth actually caused the robotic heroes to go haywire and go on a destructive rampage. Their wild outburst was labeled as Technocide, and Gold Superman and his fellow heroes destroyed all of their memorabilia in the trophy room. Lex Luthor and Dr. Sivana finally managed to shut them down and put an end to the Metal Men for good. Next up we have Prime Superman. This alternate version of Clark Kent appeared in the 12-issue All-Star Superman, where he was tasked with repairing the sun. Prime Superman was actually overexposed to solar radiation in this series, which was completely destroying his own cells. It turns out that this overexposure was orchestrated by Lex Luthor, but Superman did end up getting his final revenge. Clark managed to make it last long enough to eliminate Luthor with a gravity weapon, but he also embarked on a journey that was known as the 12 Super Challenges. This included helping the scientist Leo Quintum, as well as revealing his true identity to Lois Lane. Superman managed to complete his challenges before setting off into the sun to build it an artificial heart. Now, many people just assume that Superman had passed on, but it turns out that he was actually living as a construct within the sun. He also managed to leave his genetic code behind, so Quintum could create the second Superman, the true genetic son of Clark and Lois. Next on our list is Kal the Super Martian. If you ever wanted to picture Superman as a more traditional extraterrestrial, this is what you would end up getting. A very green version of the Man of Steel who lives on Earth 32. This is basically the equivalent of a fusion between your standard Superman as well as the Martian Manhunter. Super Martian is a leading member of the Justice Titans, and he's one of the main heroes who was captured by Prophecy in an attempt to steal their powers. Thankfully, this plan was thwarted by the Justice Incarnate, but the Super Martian has definitely had a wild ride. This strange version of Superman worked hand in hand with Batman, who managed to fight off Apex Lex. Super Martian and Batman were able to communicate via telepathy, and this obviously came in handy when it came to defending Earth 32 from its variation of Lex Luthor. And finally we have Calvin Ellis. Although this name might sound new to some of you, he's technically already been mentioned on this list. As it turned out, Calvin Ellis was the secret identity of Earth 23 Superman, who managed to put an end to Superdoom's run of planetary destruction. Calvin Ellis was introduced in Final Crisis 7 and is actually based off of US President Barack Obama. DC created this version of Superman before Obama was elected as the president in real life, so you could technically say that DC actually predicted the future. Earth 23 also happens to be a universe where African American superheroes have risen to prominent positions of power and play a pivotal role on the planet's everyday life. Ellis also played a major role in forming the Justice Incarnate, who just happened to be the special team who rescued many captured heroes from Prophecy. Ellis and his group also fought against many other multiversal threats and proved that this version of Superman is perhaps one of the strongest we've ever seen. Well, that does it for a look at the top 10 alternate versions of Superman you've never seen before. There is truly no end in sight for these Superman variations, and it looks like there could be even more coming our way in the future. Thanks as always for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you all next time.